Floyd Mayweather has finally responded to Bernard Hopkins basically calling him out for a catchweight fight. And Floyd's response has been pretty interesting because from what I can gather from his comments, he isn't entirely ruling it out. And that is interesting to me. Now, that could just be PR. Maybe he doesn't want to look like he's backing down. But at the same time, I don't know, man. Floyd has only got a couple fights left. And if he can find the right catch weight, if he can get maybe a rehydration clause and get the circumstances to be to his liking, he might just do it for the last hurrah, for the final fight. It will be probably the biggest fight of his career, and he could go out and make a huge amount of money against a guy who's much bigger than him and a guy who is, like himself, one of the best pound for pound and considered a legend in the sport. So how much would there really be for Floyd Mayweather to lose? Like, let's say he lost to Hopkins. Would it really hurt Floyd Mayweather's legacy that much if he lost to Hopkins? I don't think it would. I don't think it would hurt his legacy at all. He's fighting a guy who's massively bigger than he is. Height and reach and weight and strength and everything. Massively bigger. And a guy who's very skilled, extremely experienced, very wily and crafty, a legend in the game. Losing to him, in my opinion, would not, like I say, just in my view, it wouldn't tarnish Floyd's legacy at all. And in my opinion, him even fighting Bernard, win or lose, enhances Floyd's legacy because it shows that he's willing to do the extraordinary. So I certainly would not think any less of Floyd Mayweather if he fought Hopkins and lost. I wouldn't think no less of him. I would be extremely excited about him fighting Bernard Hopkins. So, you know, win or lose, I think it's a good situation for boxing. But as far as Floyd's comments, he said, everyone's trying to hit the jackpot to fight Floyd Mayweather, from heavyweight to flyweight. He also said, he talked about Bernard Hopkins' last fight, and he said, I didn't see Bernard's fight. I saw the first 2 rounds, but I really didn't want to watch, but I really wanted to watch Kid Chocolate, Peter Quillin, who's from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and who's always been a fan of mine. So I wanted to see him, and then I saw Bernard lose the first 2 rounds of his fight. That seemed like a sly little insult at Bernard there. But he said, after the first 2 rounds, I went for a 6-mile run. While I was out for my 6-mile run, I guess he took control of the fight. I can't take anything away from Bernard Hopkins. He's a legend like myself. And he also said, as far as the Hopkins hype, fighters get their biggest payday when they fight Floyd Mayweather. So obviously Floyd is saying Bernard only wants to fight because it's a big money fight. And he's probably right about that to a certain extent. I don't just think it's only about money for Bernard. Money certainly has a lot to do with it, but I also think with Bernard, it's a lot of pride and ego at the same time. You know, I think it's a lot of pride and ego. I think Hopkins is a little bit salty that he doesn't get anywhere near the amount of recognition that Floyd Mayweather gets. And he probably feels like he's achieved more than Floyd in his career and beaten better opponents and taken on bigger challenges. I'm sure Bernard feels that in his heart of hearts. And he feels a bit salty that he hasn't been given the elevated status that Floyd Mayweather has enjoyed throughout his career. So I think it's not just a money situation. I'm pretty sure Bernard knows that a Floyd fight is fairly unlikely to happen. So I think this is not just a challenge to Floyd physically, but it's a way of trying to, I guess, take away from Floyd Mayweather's popularity and maybe try and gain some of that popularity for himself. And, you know, he really is trying to challenge the pound for pound throne. For a guy to be still fighting on, taking dangerous fights at the age of damn near 50, then it has to be more than just about money. It has to be about ego. It has to be about legacy. It has to be about all them things. It can't just be about money. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Oh, also, there's another article here. I'll post both articles in the description below. Just more comments from Floyd. He said he's supposed to call me out, as in referring to Hopkins, as part of the game. He's supposed to. We don't know what the future holds for Floyd Mayweather. Anything is possible. But as of right now, Maidana is the guy I can't overlook. Maidana has an 80% knockout ratio. And I know this guy is going to come and try to destroy me. So yeah, that's why I feel Floyd has not completely dismissed the idea. I don't know, he seems to be maybe a little bit open to it happening if the deal was right. I hope so. Because I would love to see a historic event like that. As long as the catch weight is not too draining, as long as the rehydration clause is not too bad, because you have to imagine that Canelo Alvarez, for a lot of his 154-pound fights, comes in over 170 pounds. And Bernard Hopkins only weighed 172 pounds for his last fight against Beibut Shumenov. So Hopkins ain't much bigger than people like Canelo and Angulo and people like that. Believe it or not, he's actually not much bigger than those guys. He weighed in at 172 for the Shumenov fight. And the light heavyweight limit is 175. So best believe he wasn't much over 172 on the night against Shumenov. So he ain't much bigger than Canelo and them guys, man. So I don't think this fight is as absurd as some people are suggesting it is. At the end of the day, boxing is, if you claim to be the greatest fighter of all time, that's an extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence to back it up. They demand extraordinary feats to prove what you're saying has any validity. So it would be an extraordinary feat to fight Bernard Hopkins at 165. Even though Hopkins is an old man, he's still a world-class light heavyweight. It would be extraordinary. And I would love to see it. So if Floyd don't take the fight, I certainly wouldn't call Floyd a coward for that or anything like that. No way. It is a massive challenge. So I definitely wouldn't see it as, ducking or anything like that. No, not at all. But, if he did do it, it would certainly help his case, help his claim to be the greatest fighter of all time. Because right now, Floyd don't really have a legitimate claim. Only in the eyes of his hardcore fanboys. But in the eyes of sensible boxing fans, Floyd don't really have a legitimate claim just yet to be the greatest fighter of all time. Although the Canelo Alvarez win is going to look better and better as long as Canelo keeps winning and looking impressive. So we'll see down the line how Floyd Mayweather's resume stacks up against the very best of all time. But as of right now, he don't really have a legitimate claim to the throne of being the best to ever do it. No, he don't have that. The fighters on his resume at the moment are not good enough to consider him the greatest fighter of all time. But beating Bernard Hopkins, 165 with no rehydration clause, as far as I'm concerned, then you could make a realistic case. If he beat him and beat him convincingly, in just my humble opinion, you could make a realistic case for Floyd. But that's just me. Anyway, drop your comments below. Let me know how you feel. This is Hatman. I'm out.